So often we focus on leadership from the top, leadership at the top. Who's leading these tier one companies? What's their leadership style? What does the culture look like? What does the culture look like for the future? But today, we're going to flip that around and we're going to take a different perspective. What about the Gen Z perspective? It's all right for us to look at leadership from the top and we think we know what everybody wants, 5 different generations in the workforce. But why don't we just ask them, what do they want? And today we're going to do exactly that. Joining me at the mic today is Victoria and Andrew. Victoria, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me here today.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, Victoria.
Yeah, so a little bit about me. I'm a senior at Wayne State University, dual majoring in finance and supply chain. I have some previous work experience. I worked both in different industries. I started in banking, and I also worked in the automotive industry a little bit, but I'm excited to talk to you about my experience and learn more and talk to you about my thoughts of authentic leadership.
I love it. Andrew.
Thank you so much for having me here, Jan.
You're very welcome. Great to have you. Now tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, my name is Andrew. I'm a senior currently studying finance and supply chain at the Mike Giller School of Business at Wayne State University. Currently, I work as a financial analyst in the automotive supply chain industry. And I read your book, and I'm excited to discuss it with you.
That's great. Well, I can't wait to tear into it. So let's start off with a real easy question. Victoria, you not only did you read the book, but you were actually part of the Warrior Project that created the book. Let's do this 2 different ways. So tell me about your experience working with me in developing the book. And then secondly, I just want your raw, pure, open, and honest feedback on the book. So tell us about the process first.
Yeah, so honestly, I've never worked with a book or working, and this was a totally different project for me. So it was a really cool experience. I really liked the book in the sense that we're shifting to automotive leadership. Working with you was great. You really taught me about myself and as well as learning about new things. One thing that we decided to add to the book was adding QR codes with the podcast. So that was a really cool idea, and seeing that idea that I came up with getting implemented in the book was such a cool, phenomenal opportunity for me. But all in all, I really enjoyed the book, learning more about it and just really, changing how leadership is going to be in the future is something really, really cool. And having these senior leaders come to your podcast or read about their perspective about leadership was a really cool opportunity for me. So I really enjoyed the book overall.
Yeah, and I think that we were learning together because I'd never written a book before. It's not like I know what the heck I'm doing, right? So to me, I always think it's so important when people are embarking on these new projects to involve everybody at all different levels in the organization. So I recognize that you'd never worked on a project like this before, but it doesn't mean that you didn't have great ideas to contribute, because you clearly did. And that's a type of leadership and thinking that we need to see more of in automotive leadership culture, don't you think?
100%. And it was awesome that even though I don't have the most experience, you valued my opinion and heard it and thought it out, and something that I really valued. And I thought that was a really great partnership and something I really enjoyed.
Yeah, good. Andrew, you read the book. So what did you think? What struck you initially right after you read the book? You were like, what?
Well, I'll say this. I was intrigued in the sense that it didn't feel like I was reading a book necessarily. It felt more so like a guide, sort of like that you don't just read and think about it and say, oh, well, that was an interesting read. It's sort of something that you can carry around with you. I liked that there were prompts at the end of each chapter, calls to action that you could actually apply in your everyday life. And I'm thinking if I was a leader in the automotive industry, I would probably take advantage of that. And you even say to discuss it with your team. And that, it's such a simple detail, but it allows the words to kind of make it off the page and kind of be put into motion. You can actually use the concepts in practice. And I think that the main theme really was focused a lot on trust. It's impossible to be an authentic leader if you don't trust your employees. I mean, because otherwise, like, why are you hiring them? That kind of defeats the purpose. There was a quote from Steve Jobs in there that said, I believe it doesn't make sense to hire smart people and tell them what to do. They should be telling us what to do. So.
Yeah. What is your work experience so far, Andrew? Have you seen both sides to that? Have you been trusted and felt empowered? And have you not been trusted? Tell me about both sides of that with your work experience.
So my current position and my position right before this one are night and day. The one that I'm currently in, I've been there for about a year and a half, and I can tell that my boss definitely read the book because I feel trusted. I'm given tasks that I need to complete, but I'm never micromanaged ever. Whereas at my last position, that was somewhat of an issue.
Yeah, tell me more about the micromanagement, because I will tell you this, in my coaching practice, one of the biggest issues that I have to deal with is leaders feeling like they need to micromanage because they're afraid that you, as a young person coming into the workforce, are going to fail. And they feel responsible for that. And that pushes them into this micromanagement mode. So tell me how you felt being on the receiving end of a micromanager.
Well, I guess what I would say to managers that feel the need to constantly micromanage is that if you are so afraid that I'm going to fail, if you don't trust me, why did you hire me? I mean, you hired me to do a job. I mean, if you feel like you can do that job better than me, why are you wasting a bunch of money, training me and hiring me to do said job?
Yeah. But go deeper for me. Feelings. How did you feel?
Honestly, it kind of got to the point where it was just like soul sucking, draining. It was never fun waking up at like 7 a.m. for work every day, but it kind of got amplified by knowing that I was going to have to go and, get micromanaged. I mean, it wasn't like all the time, but, more often than not. And it kind of stemmed from goals that were more or less unattainable, just from a substance standpoint. Like, I mean, obviously you should set goals for your team. You should be tough on standards. Yeah, see? Like that reference?
He read the book. Tough on standards and tender-hearted with people.
So I think it's okay to set goals and it's okay to hold people accountable, but you have to, number one, really look at those goals that you're setting and ask yourself, are they attainable not only for me, but my team? And number two, you have to make sure that you are not asking too much, in the sense that you're not asking your team members to do something that you wouldn't do yourself.
Why is that so different now at Elm Analytics?
Well, I think that we really value our culture a lot, and that is, at least to me, that I've observed, is very trust-oriented. Like, the people who assign the work generally trust the people that it's being assigned to complete it. And, if they don't necessarily complete it in a timely manner, they're never, it never seems like you're being reprimanded. Like, more so, I'm here to help you with this. How can I help you?
It's more that nurturing, coaching kind of approach,
absolutely,
rather than I'm the boss and I'm going to tell you what to do.
And I think because of that, I've just learned so much in these last I've been there for about a year and a half now. So I think that I've learned more about finance and supply chain than I have from any of my classes. Not to discount Wayne State University, but there's just something different about hands-on learning compared to classroom learning.
Yeah, that's great. Victoria, we talked a lot about trust and micromanagement. Take me up to more of a macro level, Gen Z in general. I mean, no human on the planet, doesn't matter what generation you're in, likes to be micromanaged. But I get the sense that it's even more prevalent for Gen Z. Give me the Gen Z view on trust, empowerment, and micromanagement.
Yeah, interesting question. I feel like the older generation, they're more used to this typical command and control leadership style, while we as Gen Z and Gen Y, the future, we're really wanting a different type of leadership style. We want to have a mentor, have guidance. And I feel like our generation, if we are not getting that, we're more comfortable of letting the person know, letting the manager know. And if we're continuously not getting that, we're less afraid to leave, I feel like, than the older generation. So it'll be interesting. And I think for me specifically, I feel like I really value a person that helps build me up, provides mentorship, provides guidance on ways to improve. And that way I'm learning from them, they're learning from me, and you're both a mutually beneficial relationship compared to like when we have micromanagers or people who really nitpicky and things that might be harder for you to open up and like really are scared to make a mistake or things like that.
Yeah, fear. Certainly command and control drives a lot of fear into organizations. And then you just want to retract, right? You just pull back, you completely disengage. You're not going to bring everything you've got into that organization and culture if there's fear in the air. Have you felt fear in the air, Victoria, in anywhere you've worked?
Yeah, I've had a job where it was more specific things I had to do every day and just specific tasks. There was not really any like a lot of room for growth or a lot of room for opportunities to take on new things. In that situation, it always felt like, okay, I do my task, make sure there's nothing wrong, and then from there, there wasn't a lot of room for growth. But I've also had the opposite experiences where, my voice was very heard. You're more willing to take on new challenges, grow as individuals, network with other individuals, and you really learn more about yourself and the company. So I feel like having that mentor or seeking guidance in that way, or having a manager that supports you in that way, really helps you all in all get a better experience. And
Yeah. Tell me, Andrew, each chapter in the book was focused on a different leader, a different podcast interview. Who was your favorite and why?
It was a tough call for me. I'm going to give an honorable mention to Chapter 9, Tough on Standards, Tender-Hearted on People.
Doug Conant?
Yeah, absolutely, because it just made me think of my grandpa, who had a similar leadership style when he was the chief of police in Sterling Heights so many years ago. But he would always tell me that, I don't think that he had much of a concept of culture as we know it today in the workplace, but he would maybe refer to it more as morale. But he would always tell me whenever we talked about, career prospects or like what I'm planning to do with my life, he said that you always, if you find yourself in a leadership position, always praise in public and always reprimand in private.
Yes.
Yeah. Because you really lose nothing by doing that. In fact, you can only gain. So that just kind of made me think of him. But I think that overall, the chapter that resonated with me the most was Chapter 10. That was more or less a case study on the Blockbuster Netflix feud.
Yes.
And there are lessons that can be learned from both sides. Netflix demonstrated great resilience in the sense that they were told time and time again that this will never work, but they don't care. They kept pushing through. And, look at them today. They're probably the biggest streaming service there is.
Yeah.
And on Blockbuster's side, it's more of a cautionary tale of arrogance and hubris, that they were almost too big to fail, and that I forgot the name of the CEO, but he basically held back laughter when discussing the Netflix acquisition. And so I think that that's kind of not only something that you can apply in leadership settings, but to your life in general. Because, who doesn't want to be resilient? Who doesn't want to push themselves to be the best that they can? And conversely, hubris kind of leads to being content. And at that point, you're never going to improve.
No, you get complacent. I love that you saw both sides of that. You saw an opportunity to learn from both sides of that. That's great. Thank you. Victoria, who was your favorite?
Yeah. My favorite chapter was chapter 7 with Sandy Stojkovski. Yes.
Sorry. Sandy Stojkovski.
Stojkovski, yes. So she's the CEO of Vitesco.
Yes.
And I actually was at an Forum event later this year, and I saw her speak, and I thought, wow, she's like such a great leader. She definitely is very well respected in her industry. But it was really interesting in the book hearing her perspective, how she, even though she's so well respected and known in the industry, she also faces imposter syndrome and faces these issues. And it's interesting to see that from such high leaders open up about topics like that. So I really enjoyed that, as well as hearing how she did not feel like as if she was had the most experience, and she got selected for a role, given her manager really rooted for her and said good things about her. So I think, having that experience for her really changed her managing style, and she started to act like him. And it really just takes one person to like really change the culture and how she leads her team. It was a really cool experience to learn about. So I really enjoyed that chapter.
Yeah. Well, this idea of leaders just saying one thing to you when you're at the starting point of your career.
Mm-hmm.
I can't believe how many people have told me, that are way up in their career, they can go back decades and remember the conversation. I recently interviewed Craig Keyes. He is the group executive for the Infiniti brand in the US, and he started his career working in the warehouse for Nissan, into a parts warehouse operation. So he was just a guy working in a warehouse. And if you look him up on LinkedIn, you'll see all the progression. And he is now group executive at Infiniti. And on that podcast, he can remember exactly decades ago when a leader within Nissan spoke to him and suggested that he take a step forward. I spoke to a procurement leader at Danaher just a few days ago, and she told me very similar story. She can go back and remember exactly the conversation that empowered her and gave her the belief in herself so that she could take on that career. And if there's one message to all the leaders out there right now, it is please spend time with the younger generation. Help them, support them, nurture them, and be that leader that gives that person the one thing that they will remember 20 and 30 years from now that propelled them through that career. It's amazing that one thing can do that for you. And I love hearing that. So you're right. That really comes out in Sandy's interview, doesn't it?
Yes, 100%.
Tell me some of the most important traits that you want to see in a leader. You're on this podcast today, representing a generation, quite frankly. What do you want to see in leadership and culture? Feel free to go back to the 21 Traits of Authentic Leadership. I know you both read it. Give me a few of those traits that you really want to see in a leader. Andrew, let's start with you.
Strength, honesty, empathy, introspection. Okay.
Peel that back for me. Define strength. What does that look like and feel like for you?
A strong leader in the sense that they are able to get the job done more or less, that they're able to do what's required of them. They're able to roll up their sleeves, get their hands dirty, and work alongside their team members to get the hard jobs done.
Okay, so you don't want somebody in an ivory tower in a nice suit telling you what to do? I'm guessing that's not going to work for you, right?
Yeah, I'd say probably not.
Okay.
I think that there's too much do as I say, not as I do these days. And it seems that in your book, you talk about sort of moving away from that culture. So, which I definitely agree with.
Yeah. So you want to see strength, you want to see empathy, you want to see honesty. Honesty, I think, is pretty straightforward. But tell me more about empathy.
I think that a good leader is, like we just talked about, somebody who doesn't tell you what to do, but is able to lead by example and sort of show you what to do, teach you, uplift you.
Yeah.
Rather than just kind of sit in an ivory tower and give commands and try to control you.
Yeah. Okay. No, it's a great answer. Victoria, what would you like to see in a leader?
Yeah. Trust, transparency, and I feel like confidence would be my three. Mainly being like trust, knowing that I can trust the person, knowing that I can have conversations about them outside of work, things like that, not just only your typical day-to-day. And just being fully transparent with me on things I can improve, things that I could do better, as well as just open and honest, I feel like is very important. And then just having the leader be confident, knowing that they're doing the work that we want to see, and knowing that they are doing well in their role, and someone that we look up to as like people working for the person.
Yeah. Talk to me about being open. There's this idea of humility and vulnerability. And certainly when I grew up in the industry, you were told and expected to keep a line between your personal life and your professional life. So you would never talk about how you're feeling. That F-bomb was not allowed. The other F-bomb was allowed all over the place. But the F-bomb that relates to feelings, no. You were considered weak if you shared some sort of emotion or showed some level of vulnerability at work. The boss was expected to be tough at all times. That's clearly changed. Why is that so important for you?
Yeah. For me, I think it's important in the sense that if my boss is super strict and to the point, sometimes, as an individual, would be more scared to make sure you're like 100% perfect. There's no mistakes. You won't be able to like really always provide your best work possible. So I feel like knowing that like I can talk to my manager even like about like simple things like how their weekend was, things like that, really, spurs conversation and helps me feel more comfortable and providing my best work I could.
You want them to be human.
Yeah, exactly.
And authentic. Let's turn the mic around. What questions do you have for me, Andrew? You can ask me anything.
So I guess someone of your experience, if you're looking at someone like me who's in their last year of school, what advice would you give to me if not only like how to find myself in a leadership position, but how to take the appropriate actions once I'm there?
Oh, good question. In the early stages, it comes down to personal accountability. And I'm sure you've heard me say many times, I used to hate the word accountability because I associated it with blame. And it is not. Accountability simply means, can I count on you? And it starts with you and the narrative that's going on in your head. Can you count on yourself? So you've heard the infamous college speech where the military guy talks about get up in the morning and make your bed, because it's you're training your brain to make a commitment, follow through on that commitment, make sure that it happens. So you say to yourself, I'm going to make my bed every morning, and you do it, right? So it's being aware of the narrative and the excuses you give yourself to get out of things, making sure that you develop that muscle of strong personal accountability. And it's from large projects to the simplest things. If you're going to show up at 10 o'clock for a meeting, show up at 10 o'clock for a meeting. Even better, show up 5 minutes early. If you're going to tell somebody, I'll call you back tomorrow, call them back tomorrow. It's these little things that add up. That generates trust. People will then trust you, trust your word. So you've developed a core of personal accountability. Once you've got that, then you can contribute on a team and be a really strong contributing team member, and people will trust you. And then it goes from there. The future is bright.
So in other words, just kind of do what you say you're going to do, not only for others, but for yourself too.
Yes, yes. So often we talk ourselves out of things. You know, you've done it. We're all human. We do it, right? There's a narrative running around in our head. I might say to Victoria, oh, I'll call you tomorrow, right? But then something comes up tomorrow and I'll say to myself, oh, I'll call her the day after. She won't mind. No, it's not good enough. If you say you're going to call somebody tomorrow, you call them tomorrow. Don't try and convince yourself that it's okay, he or she won't mind. It's okay if I'm 2 days late with this. It is not. It is never okay unless, if you do need some more time for something, you go back to the person and you say, hey, I can meet the deadline, but really I'm having trouble getting some data or some information. I would like an extension of 2 days. Is that okay with you? Before the due date. That's how you manage those situations. You build rapport, you build credibility, you build integrity. Thinking about how you follow through on your own personal commitments, no matter how small, I think is incredibly important to setting the right foundation for a career.
Thanks.
Okay, you're welcome. Okay, Victoria, your turn. What are you going to ask me?
I'm curious, what is your biggest piece of advice for individuals like myself or the Gen Z population entering the workforce? What advice do you give us?
Well, I think that, first of all, recognizing as Gen Z that it's quite possible that there are 5 different generations in the workforce. And this piece of advice, I would say, goes out to every single generation. Just because you grew up in a certain generation with certain aspirations, certain values, certain things that happened in your life that formed your view of the world and how you behave, the leadership model that you grew up with, the leadership model you expect, recognize that with 5 different generations in the workforce, there are 5 different answers. And they're not all wrong. They're just different. So rather than judge people for their differences in the way that they think, take a moment to have some empathy. You said empathy was important. And take a moment to understand the other person's point of view. Don't think you have all the answers and it should be a certain way. It's never black or white. It's always about taking time to understand the other person's view and perspective and then coming together to make the right decision. If you can go through the start of your career with understanding what your core of personal accountability is and recognizing that everybody thinks a little differently, there are differences, and taking time to understand the other person's position, I think you're on your way. And with that, that is AutoCulture 2.0 with the Gen Z perspective from Wayne State University students. Andrew, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
Victoria, thank you again for being on the show.
Yes, thank you so much for having me here today.